How are you, Jay?
Yeah, I'm very good, mate. How are you? Good to meet you.
Nice to meet you, sir. I'm good, thank you. How's lockdown keeping you?
Um, Bored, frustrated. Yeah, it's same for everyone, really, isn't it? It's tough times, but
Mm,
I think I'm sure we'll come through the other side and look back on it in years to come as a landmark time for us all.
100%. Our kids will be studying about this. It's crazy.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah,
You missing football?
yeah, desperately.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely at that point with everything that's gone on and with getting some noises around potential start dates or start times. So yeah, it's kind of nice to be looking forward and starting to think about timings around that as much as we can. So yeah, but I think anybody involved really, particularly when you see the elite levels playing now back to games on the TV, and you're thinking, well, we all want to get going, really, don't we?
Yeah, 100%. Everyone's missing. Everyone wants the social side of things and
Mm.
meeting up with their pals and playing football. But I heard like goals and the little five-a-side places are starting to open up slowly, which is a good thing.
Yeah,
But yeah,
yeah. I think as long as there's it's the confident that it's safe to return, then great. Let's get going.
100%. So tell me, how's things going at hashtag so far?
Yeah, really well. I think obviously we've just didn't get to complete it, but it would have been our second season at a competitive level. It's very, very unique club in a unique situation and doing things differently. But for me, that's been part of the fun, really. Someone who's been involved in non-league football for a significant amount of time now, and always been of the kind of traditional view.
Mm.
It was really interesting to get that insight when Spencer first had the conversation with me and asked me to come in and help out a little bit. Yeah, it turned my head, and whilst we're very different, our aim is to do things properly, like a proper football club, and that's, I think, anybody that's come across us, would say that, we're not, in terms of how we conduct ourselves on a match day and approach things and approach the leagues and cups and competitions. We run it very much like another club with some quirks maybe, but we take it seriously and we approach it as professionally as we can. And I think that's shown in the first two seasons in terms of how we've coped.
100%. I mean, I've been watching your games. I'm a massive fan personally. You guys won the league last year, which is congratulations,
Yeah.
by the way.
Thank you.
Fantastic thing to do in your first season. When Spencer first gave you that call, and knowing most people know it as a YouTube side rather than a non-league side, was there a certain kind of thought of how you'll be perceived by other people, by other teams?
How I'd be perceived? No, not necessarily. It was quite strange how it came about. I happened to be out of football at the time anyway. I had stepped away from my previous role the end of the previous season, and it was just after Christmas, funnily enough. And the interesting thing is, I just got a call out of the blue from Spencer's dad, Steve, who had been physio at East Thurrock, and I worked with him, and I knew Steve quite well, and I got contact with him out of the blue, saying, you're available for a chat. And my son, who's now 14, at the time, one of his Christmas presents had been Spencer's book. He'd always been a fan of Spencer and following him on YouTube. So I was always aware of what Spencer's journey had been since his dad had left East Thurrock, because whilst we were at East Thurrock, Spencer had come along and he had done it. He started to do a little bit of a mini documentary on one of our seasons. He asked if he could come in and film just with him and one camera. And he was just starting out at the time, I think. And he did 2 or 3 episodes, I think, and I think the last episode he'd kind of got the footage for never hit the the air because his work just took off, and then I think he couldn't give the time because it was voluntary on behalf. He was he was doing it for his own means, and we were benefiting from him coming in and just being around. We thought it would be quite a good thing for the club. So that never took off, and he went away, did his thing, and I kind of got to learn a little bit about hashtag through Steve because he was still working at East Thurrock and he was telling his stories. And I remember one Saturday him telling me that he was at Wembley Stadium the following day, and I was like, "Well, what's that for?" He said, "Oh, Spencer's team are playing." He's like, "You're kidding?" I remember joking with him. Doesn't need a manager, does he? And we laugh about it, and we were like, "This is amazing." He was just telling these stories about, and not just Spencer, but also Seb, Spencer's brother, about, and he, following his kind of path with his golf, and how he was getting into that, and his success with the Trilby Tour. And so Steve would tell us these boys, his boys were doing these things, and I used to have these conversations in almost kind of disbelief with Steve about how on earth did they get into these things, and we'd chat about it. So I'd always ask what was up next, and because Ellis, my son, was such a huge fan, he's been kind of trotting along with me to my football since the age of about 7 or 8, and he would spend like pre-season just being in the way really, or picking up markers for us and carrying water bottles about, and just loved, just being alongside us. And so he was there for some of Spencer's filming, and that maybe got him into the YouTube scene himself as a fan. And he was always very, I'd hear Spencer's voice coming out of the bedroom where he's watching one of his YouTube videos and things like that. And he'd always tell me what was going on, and this big hashtag thing, and it was huge. And, and I remember we were playing in we were at East Thurrock, and we had a Isthmian playoff semi-final against Tunbridge Angels, and Spencer and Steve had come along to watch, and Ellis had been there, and he spoke to him. He was telling me after the game about this new team, hashtag, and he showed me how many followers they already had on Instagram, and it was just like, this is crazy. They're not even a real football team. This is nuts. So I was loosely aware of hashtag's journey. Steve contacted me, asked me if we could have a chat, and he said, Spencer's got plans for their next step. He said they want to go into the competitive football setup. Would you be open for a conversation? I said, yeah, I'm always happy for a conversation. I said, but I'll be honest, Steve, I'm not sure it's going to be for me, but I'm happy to speak to Spencer because I may be able to help him with identifying someone to manage. I don't know. So I had a chat with Spencer, and he kind of said, look, we're having our first training session next week. Would you mind coming over? So I said, yeah, it's not a problem, because I was out of football anyway at the time, taking a break. I went along, didn't tell anyone, and I just watched. And there was no real structure to it because they were just turning up to have a game amongst themselves. But I went along and I was listening to them and watching them, and they had bundles of enthusiasm. And I didn't know any of the guys from the YouTube stuff, so it wasn't, I knew of them, but without knowing any finer details. I think a couple of lads had just got back from a trip to America that had come via the club for something, and they were talking about that. And it was just this. It's a really, really great atmosphere with a couple of camera setups, and they did a couple of challenge things, and they did some training. And he said, what do you think? I said, well, it's hard to judge anything. I said, and he said, do you think you'd be interested in getting involved? I said, I'm really not sure, mate. I said, but I'm not doing anything at the moment. I said, so if it helps, I'll come along and I'll take some sessions for you. So you've got someone at least to put on these initial sessions, maybe give some structure to your training. I said, then we can kind of take it from there, and I might be able to help if you want some advice. And I didn't know anything about the plans, and we just did that for a few weeks. This was about the January this started, so it would have been January 2018, and did a few sessions, weeks. And then he said, well, we've got a game coming up, and he had one of these crazy ideas that he does that, we're going to take on a country. And I was like, well, what do you mean? Yeah, we're going to aim to beat a country. And then he's kind of got this twist on the Canifa World Cup that was coming up, and they'd had some contacts. He said, would you like to come to a game? It was at where they play their games. I said, yeah, I'll come along. I'll observe for you. And it kind of just went from that, really. And I remember being at that game and being stood outside the changing rooms, being ready to let in. And a couple of boys were aware of me, but didn't know. None of them knew who I was. So it was just some guy who had been helping out with training. Some of them hadn't been to training because only the ones that were local could get to training. We had guys coming from, the Midlands up north for games. They were coming all over the country to play these games because they were only playing once every 6 weeks. And it was this great thing that they were involved with. And I remember stood outside just away from them and listening to them talk, and their enthusiasm for football was really quite refreshing. It was, you get around a lot of football changing rooms and things, and sometimes you're in an environment where the last thing they actually want to talk about is football. They're talking about, where they might have gone last night or where they're going tomorrow night, and the social. You know what it's like. It's almost like football becomes the job, doesn't it?
It does, yeah.
These boys were talking about the game that had been on. It was a Sunday afternoon at 5. So they were talking about the Super Sunday, the game that had been on at 12 o'clock, and now they've got the one that they're going to miss on record and, Sky Plus, and they're going to go home and watch it later, talking about players and this enthusiasm. And I just thought, I like this. They might not be at the level that you would expect, but the passion and the enthusiasm for football was as high as anything I'd seen. And that, I thought, that's when I started to think I could possibly work with these guys because I'll be getting something back. It isn't just, they're not just here for the quirkiness. They're here because they love football. That was the thing, I suppose. And then they had a trip to Scotland and Spencer invited me along. We went up to Glasgow and I think they put some tickets on, well, I say on sale, they put tickets out to be available. They didn't actually charge. They just did them through one of these, Eventbrite or something like that. And they initially put up 500 tickets to come and watch. And you're involved in non-league football yourself. So the kind of crowds that we get. Yeah. And they had to put another 500 on because the 500 went in like half an hour. So they put another 500 on, and so they end up with a crowd of nearly 1,000 turn up to play against some guys in the shadows of Hampden Park in Scotland on Queen's Park's training ground, and it was just a surreal experience. Walking through the airport for one, seeing some of the guys getting recognised because they played some YouTube football, going up, experiencing a huge crowd coming out to see these guys, seeing the way they interacted with the fans and the supporters. It was just absolutely brilliant. And it was that weekend when we were up there that I started to have serious conversations with Spencer about what his ambitions were for this football club that he wanted to take into the real world. And it kind of it went from there, really. And the plans to go into step 6, there was an opportunity because a new league was being created. Originally, they were saying it would have to be step 7 at the highest point, but there were concerns knowing the kinds of crowds that potentially # could arrange that step 7 might not be able to cope with that. So it was, the timing was right for them, and it went from there. And it's an enjoyable place to be. It really is.
So when you first came in and you saw the passion and the excitement they have for football, as a manager, does that make your life easier?
I think, well, as a coach, it does. And at the time I was just putting the sessions on because you're getting something back. You've got people, you can see that they're listening and they're trying to take on board what you're saying. So that makes it a lot easier. I wasn't at that point about managing them, because if managing them, there was going to be change. There would have to be change for them to survive and compete at that competitive level. That was pretty clear. It was then about who from within that group were able to commit, were able to compete. And because it was a big culture shift for them, and actually it was credit to them how they did it, because it was difficult.
How hard was it? How hard is it for you knowing they're all best friends and they're all really close, How hard is it for you to kind of say, okay, you're not good enough? I'm sorry.
It was because I had time. It wasn't like anything had to be done immediately. I've been around them since January. Some of them worked it out for themselves. Some it was about, seeing, having the opportunity to be part of the pre-season and understanding how it, was going to be ramped up in terms of intensity. Seeing that some new players were being added, and initially I only brought in 3 or 4, I think, and then it kind of gradually built from that. So it wasn't that difficult, because I wasn't looking at them as a group of best friends, because actually in football, you become friends with your teammates. So that togetherness, comes anyway as being part of the same team. And they weren't just all Spencer's friends. They were guys that had come. It had grown organically in itself prior to that, in terms of people joining at certain stages through different kinds of contacts. You had Spencer with a kind of core group of friends, and Seb with a core group of friends that weren't friends with each other. They were brought together for the purpose of being part of this football club. And then, other additions would come along later, because someone might know someone, or they needed a position fill in for a particular week. So it wasn't quite, going into a group of guys that had all been to school together, grown up together, and didn't want to be split apart. Spencer was at that point where I want to make the next step, and I know that means things are going to change. But things have been changing gradually from them over that period anyway. From the very beginning, there'd been a fair amount of change to where they were when I got there. It just, in the 2 years that they had been in existence, they had realised that they had to improve to stay relevant.
Yeah.
Because they were taking on tougher opposition every time. They were trying to raise the bar for themselves.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting. I mean, I admire everything you guys are doing. I admire it. I think it's amazing what you guys are doing. And I appreciate everything that Spencer's doing. When it comes to now looking for new players at the point of time you are now, is it easier that the fact you guys got the reputation of being who you are?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah,
I think so. It's not been particularly difficult for me to recruit, because of what we bring, and that's about. Some of it comes from my contacts and my staff's contacts originally as well. So when I'm bringing people in, people that know me know that it's not a gimmick. They're coming into something serious. But we've created an ethos where it is a very, very enjoyable place to play football, and guys don't want to leave. Yeah. It's tough for it's they really don't. There's not many that think I want to go and play elsewhere. It definitely that focus and that attention that it brings does appeal to some, because we're able to give guys a little bit of a platform to be in the shop window. They're getting on the flip side of that, they're also treated sometimes with the expectation that's unfair and unreasonable on a player at step 5 of the non-league pyramid, and they're being compared to their shots to goals ratio is being compared with Sergio Aguero's, and it's just the worlds apart. But in the eyes of the supporters or the viewers, they're very much, and because it's quite a young audience, that's the world now. So it's tough. They get a fair bit. If we lose a game, it's the end of the world.
I can only
it's extreme. It's extreme. So it brings about. It's definitely a focus and a level of attention that I've never experienced previously.
It's insane. I can only imagine how much stick you would get for losing the game from the audience, especially when everything.
Well, we didn't win any of our first 4 games when we went into competitive football, and yeah, it was interesting.
It's definitely a mental test. Would you agree?
I can only imagine what it must be like for the guys working at the top, That's the way I just think this is crazy. And I think it probably says quite a bit for the world we live in now, where instant success, and a new manager comes in, and years ago a manager could get relegated and stay in his job and still be a good manager and return and come back from it. Nowadays, it just doesn't happen. You look at the likes, even we're speaking topically now, and you look at the stick that Mikel Arteta's getting, and he's not been in the job 2 minutes. It is an instant, now environment and world. Everything's got to have happened yesterday, or you're a failure. So it's tough. I'm sure it's tough emotionally, because all the money in the world, doesn't fix what goes on in mind, does it?
No, it doesn't. So, going just a little bit more deeper. Now, you guys have cameras set up. Obviously, it's edited to not show too much, which is perfectly reasonable. You don't want to show too much. How hard do you feel like it's added extra pressure?
No, fun enough. We spoke about this at the very beginning, and before I accepted the job, it was very clear, and I'm really fortunate enough, because everybody's got the same aim and same goal within the club. It's not like you've got an external company coming in to do a fly-on-the-wall documentary, and they're looking for something that's going to sell. You see, they're not coming in looking to make a fool of anyone. We all want success for each other at the club. And one of the things I said, I will need to be able to say to whoever's in charge of the edit, I don't want that to go in, because there are certain things I might be talking about, an individual, for example, something, if I'm going to be critical or something, might be speaking about the opposition or the official, anything, because as a manager, you're looking for ways to get an edge all the time, and you don't want everything to be out there. We steer clear in the edit of tactical information, so it's normally just the quite vague motivational stuff, because we'd be shooting ourselves in the foot to be offering out that kind of information for everybody and anybody to see. So, and I was really fortunate. We the first few weeks, we had a few instances where I would be conscious of what I might have said, and I'd say, I don't want that to go in because it might be construed the wrong way, or I don't think it's something for public consumption. I think that needs to stay, amongst the group. And they've been brilliant, the guys, with that. And we talk about, as a football team, and I say this quite often, as a football team, we're quite low level. We're still growing and learning and developing, but from a content perspective and production, we've got some real guys of, you look at some of the guys and their experience in the production world and what they've done. It's really, really impressive. So these are professional people that know what they're doing. It's not just, like from the beginning when it was just mates pulling it together. And you think even now with like Spencer's own experience in the production world as well. I'm not even talking about him. I'm talking about the team is built around that and the level of experience they've got. So I'm comfortable that they want the same things as I want. So they're not going to put anything out that's going to scupper our chances of doing well. So initially at the beginning, it was a little bit, can we just check on these things? And I might say, can I see the team talks before they get put out? And now it's just got to the point now I might get a message from one of the guys saying, you happy with this to go in? Do you want to see it before it goes? And I will, 9 times out of 10 say, if you don't think it's going to be damaging, then I'm happy, because we're thinking along the same lines.
Yeah. I mean, just for the younger coaches, I know the answer to this question, but for the younger coaches, how important is it in non-league football to have a support network?
I think at any level of football, it's really important, and that support network for younger coaches, you really need to focus on growing that from the very beginning and leaning on people, and they don't have to be the people you're working directly with. Your support network can come from anywhere. So, but yeah, when you get into that, you need a team that you trust, and you can, that you can trust, that you value, that trust you. It's important. It's important that you're working with people that have the same principles and the same values and the same aims as yourself, I think.
Now I'm going to step away from hashtag now. I'm going to step away from that.
Yeah, there was a world before hashtag.
When did you first start coaching?
I first started coaching, I think, around about 2003. I think I was still playing. So I suffered a lot of injuries when I was playing. I've suffered some quite serious injuries. Fracture in my spine that meant I was out for over a year and needed surgery on, and then suffered broken leg, which was probably the one, I think, about the age of, I was about 26, 27 when I broke my leg, and that's probably the one that I didn't really recover from and come back from. Mm-hmm. And I had played in a side that had been quite successful, and I'd been a captain of that team and had a good relationship with the manager, a chap called Dennis Elliott, and he took a job on at Barking back when in the Isthmian League, I think, may have been the Southern League, and I had just left Ford United, where I'd been for the previous 6 seasons, I think. Mm-hmm. Save a 1 year sabbatical where I moved to Enfield and for a season, but ended up going back to Ford, and we'd had a really successful time. One where I think we had 4 promotions in 6 seasons, going from the Essex Senior League up to the Ryman Premier, which at the time was Step 2 because there wasn't a conference North and South. And within that, there was a Division 3. The Isthmian League was Division 3 to 1 Premier. Then it wasn't geographically split. So he'd gone to Barking, and he asked me to come and play. And the first session I turned up, he said, "All right, brilliant, you're coming in." He said, "But I haven't got any coaches yet. Can you take training for me?" And it was as simple as that. Can you take some sessions for me? And I did that, and I put on sessions that I enjoyed as a player. Going into a new group, a couple I knew as he was signing people, that I'd played with before, and it just went from that. And after about 3 or 4 weeks, he said to me, "I think you're doing really well at this. I'd like you to be player coach." And I thought, well, it's an opportunity for me actually to start thinking about, because as a youngster, even as a kid, I was always intrigued by what the coaches were doing, why they were doing it, what messages were being given. I was very fortunate that just as a kid playing, my Sunday side was run by a man called Roger Cross, who has had a phenomenal career as a professional, first as a professional footballer, but at the time when I first started playing in his local junior Sunday side, he was, I think, the first team coach at Millwall, and this was at the time when they were in the top division of English football. He then subsequently became assistant manager at Tottenham Hotspur. He was first team coach at West Ham. So this is someone who's been working at the top of the game for such a long time, and he had this fantastic manner that was transferable to young kids and made them love and enjoy football alongside the people that he had helping him. So that, because of the structure of that coaching development I had as a child, it gave me a bit of an interest. I was always obsessed with football anyway. And then when I moved into adult football and semi-pro football, my teammates would say to me, "Oh, you'll be a manager one day." And I didn't necessarily think that myself, but it must have come from the way I would talk about things, maybe. So when this opportunity came along, I thought, well, this could be the next step. And I was fighting the thought of that I was going backwards in my mind, but I think in my heart, I knew that I was losing my the level of playing ability that I'd got to, which was a reasonable standard. And I wasn't feeling like I was able to recover as well from games. I wasn't having the impact on games, and I started to focus on the coaching side of it, and got to the point where I probably sacrificed my football for the coaching.
Mm.
So that's how that happened. And then as a result of that, I just went from, I think the following season, he said, look, I'm going to make you assistant manager. And it was a really, really, by then we'd built a side that was then challenging for promotion as well. And we had good players and guys who had been my friends, real strong characters as well, that were good footballers, but were also, you know, they wouldn't suffer falls gladly. And it was a really good experience for me to have to come through that, to make that transition from being teammate to staff. And some of them, I remember I met up with a few of them a couple of years ago, and they were talking about the first time I kind of laid it on the line that I wasn't happy with them. And they talk about how they remembered it and they reflect on it. And they said at the time, they walked out the changing room, kind of looking at each other and saying, he's got away with that. You know, it felt almost like it was their acceptance. Yeah. What he said is, we're going to take it. We're taking it from him. And I think that was the big step in me gaining their respect, not just as a friend, but as their coach. And that was I didn't know it at the time, but reflecting and looking back, it was probably quite a big moment for me, because that I could have been eaten up. I could have been destroyed, because if you haven't got the haven't got the players on your side, or willing to listen, or willing to take on board what you're saying, then you're going to struggle potentially.
How hard, how easy? Well, you can say how hard, how easy. How was the transition process from player to coach for you?
The biggest difficulty for me was giving up playing. Was letting go, because I think particularly in non-league football, where you're only together, 3 times a week, I found it impossible to be good at both. Because if I was going to be effective as a player, then something was going to have to give on the coaching in terms of the amount of time and commitment I could give. Because as a coach, you're giving everything to everyone. You're looking out for it. As a player, it's very singular. It's about you. It's about what you're doing, and it's how you contribute to the team. But you can only really affect you, and you worry about your own form and what you're doing. But as a coach, you've got to think bigger than that. So that was the toughest bit, being part of a setup where at times I felt I should have been playing, and I wasn't. And then having to almost get over the disappointment of I'm not playing, so I've now got to focus on the people that are. Whereas other players might have had 10 minutes to have their sulk and have their own time. With me, it was like immediate. You've got to snap from one to the other. And then it got to the point where the manager stepped down and I was offered the job. And that then became the break. We had a very, very sad situation at the club where the chairman passed away. The club had to take a voluntary relegation. Financially, it was in trouble. It had to start again, and part of that process was offering me the job. And that was when I took that absolute break from being player to manager. I was still young enough to play, but I didn't think that I would be doing it justice, and then just took that and focused on that. So I became manager of Barking, I think, around about 2006, 2007. Only did 1 season, and I resigned because it wasn't right for me. I think in hindsight, I probably wasn't ready. But it was also, there were bigger problems around the club that I wasn't prepared to stay and be a part of. I felt it wasn't good for me. So I made the decision to resign. And then I did a year at Dagenham and Redbridge. It was their first season as a Football League team, working with they were called their reserves, but it was more of an under-18s playing in only a local reserve league, and you'd get a smattering of first-team players. And that was a really good experience working. John Steele and Terry Harris were the management, but I would report to and work for Robbie Garvey, who was fantastic for me in that year. Tremendous bloke, excellent coach in my opinion. Was tough, was not cut from a different cloth, if you like, in terms of demand and expectation. But I really, really enjoyed that year working for him. Then I got the opportunity to go back to my old club, who were Forge United, and then I changed the name to Redbridge to be the manager there. And I worked there for a season and a bit, and then there were issues around the budget. I took over the job from Dean Holdsworth, and they'd just missed out on promotion, and they'd had a brilliant year, but I think they were overspending. Mm-hmm. And I went in, and halfway through the season, I had a small budget that then became nothing because of some financial difficulties. We had problems with our floodlights, which meant we had to play away from home for, I think, a third of the season because the league had stopped us from playing at home. And then I was led to believe that things would improve for the following season, but it's quite clear that wasn't going to happen. And it kind of got to a point where I felt, because I'd been told that there would be a playing budget, and I'd spoken to players about that, and then within a few weeks in, that had changed again, and it wasn't going to happen. And I understood the reasons, but I felt that I had become that person that had signed players under false pretenses, and it didn't sit well with me. Mm-hmm. And so, out of principle, I resigned again. And I think that's kind of the big thing for me around that time. Even though I was a young manager, I wasn't afraid to step away from something if it wasn't right. And I kind of learnt that. And I ended up being out for that season. I got a phone call to go in with John Coventry at East Thurrock United. He asked me if I'd come in and do some coaching. And I ended up, being there as his assistant for 7 or 8 years, I think. And we got promoted into the National League South, and had 2 FA Cup first round appearances, 2 promotions, some really good FA Trophy runs, and some really good times. And that was, I stayed there for 7 or 8 years. And again, I got to the point where I felt like I wanted to be a manager again. I didn't think it would ever be right, even if there was a chance for me taking over at East Thurrock. I'm not sure that would have felt right for me. So I stepped away. My children were kind of at the age where they were, not my son so much, but my daughter was missing me from being at football all the time. And I just made a decision to finish at the end of that season, and ended up being out of the game for not much more than 6 months, because that's, it was that following Christmas that I got the call from Spencer. But yeah, it's lots of experience gained through that period of time, really, and being undertaking different roles within a management structure, being, the coach, being an assistant, being a player coach, being a manager, being a reserve team manager. So yeah, understanding, getting a little, not necessarily all in, in that kind of structured, staged order of starting from the bottom and taking, I had a manager's job before I was assistant, and things like that. But things don't happen in a straight line, do they? So, and I think that's, it came around that way, and to the point where even taking on hashtag, for me, there was an element of risk because my last job had been at step 2 of the football pyramid, and I was taking on a job at step 6, and people were looking and saying, well, why is he taking that? Why would he do that? But it was more about the bigger picture, really, with hashtag, in terms of looking to build a football club that's sustainable and be part of that.
It's an incredible story, honestly. I've always had the question of, personally, when I was quite young, before I learned everything I've learned, is what's the best way to get into management? Now, for you as a manager now who's been in the game for quite a long time, what would be the advice for young coaches how to get into management?
Yes, and so yes, it's interesting because you say I've been, and I think about it, it's a long time, but I still consider myself as a baby in management.
Interesting.
Because it's not like being a player and, you know, a 10-year career. You can be 10 years in as a football manager, and trust me, you're still learning. 15, you know, there are guys in the game. You know, I'm now I'm 44 now, but there are guys that have got 20, nearly 25 years experience on me that are, you know, you're competing with, and they're guys I look at and I think, now they're experienced. I still very much see. So I would say for young coaches is, as difficult as it is, try not to be in too much of a rush. Some real good advice and the things that I was told is be careful about, you know, the jobs you take, because your first job can be your last job if it's the wrong one. So that's always stuck with me. I applied for jobs as assistant manager of East Thurrock and didn't even get interviews at clubs that I felt that I was. And then I even had comments. People had said to me, some of the feedback would be, well, it's because you've never been a manager. And I didn't correct them on that because they were wrong. I didn't feel the need to correct them on that, because that told me, well, that wasn't the right job for me anyway, because if the person doing the hiring hasn't done the research, then, but they've clearly not read my application on my CV. So, you know, it probably wouldn't have been the right job for me anyway. I took the view of that's telling me more about you than it is about me, and that, and I kind of used that. But it's a tough well to break into, in the sense of people tend to go with what they know, and that's unfortunate in that sense, even with you know, with hashtags, certainly. You know, Spencer went for somebody that, based on, I think people, and I'm like this myself, is you get a feeling for people and you make decisions based on that as much as anything. And I think that's how it come about with me getting the hashtag job. Had it been advertised at the beginning, I don't know. It might have been, but I don't know if it would have attracted the right kind of person that was needed. That's, you know, on the basis that I'm kind of making the assumption that I am the right kind of person. You know, only time I'm still very early into that. You know, it's 2 seasons, but 1 season is incomplete, and it's not. You know, I'm still proving myself in my mind, that hashtag. You know, so I'd say, yeah, for young coaches, don't be in too much of a rush. Be prepared to do anything. Be prepared to take a step back to go forward. Don't be afraid of walking away from something if it's not right for you. Trust and believe. And that's, I'm comfortable in my skin that if the job ended tomorrow, I might not get another football job. I'm comfortable with that. It would be tough, I know, but I know I can live my life because of my family life. I've got a really great family life, so there'll always be something. You know, I'll go and do something. It might not be as a manager. It might not be as a coach at any kind of level. It might only be volunteering at a local school, which is what I did when I stepped away from East Thurrock. I went and volunteered at a local school. to put some coaching sessions on, just to stay. And that taught me loads as well, because it took me back to the basics of kids starting with no football experience whatsoever.
Mm.
And you see, and I learned from them. I learned from 5-year-olds that never kicked a ball before, and took that into working with adults. So always, I think, just keep your eyes open. And if you're really young, if you're still young enough to play, and you've got coaching ambitions, I would say still try and play at whatever level. Don't sacrifice, because your coaching can benefit from your playing career at whatever level that is. Because if you're a player, you're sitting the other side. You know, you're taking yourself from being the person delivering to being delivered to, and then you can start thinking about how you're receiving that information, how your teammates might be receiving it differently, how you've got different types of learners. So if you're young enough that you can still play and you're able to combine the two, do that. That would be my biggest thing. Do that if you can, and then just be thinking about the people that you're learning, that are coaching you. What are you gaining from that, as well as the people you're working alongside when you're coaching, or the people that you are actually coaching.
Mm. That's actually really interesting. I've never heard that before. So you've taught me something today.
Well, I don't know, but just to think about. I mean, you work with, you're someone you're working with adults and children at the moment, aren't you? Mm-hmm. So, and I reckon that you could definitely put the same session on for both.
Yes.
In a day, you could put the same session on for, what age are the youngsters you work with?
Yeah, under 14s at the moment.
So under 14s, you can definitely take an under 14 session and go and put it on with your semi-professional side that you're working with. Mm-hmm. And you might adapt it slightly, and you might be looking for different outcomes, but you can get the same level of enjoyment for the players, and you just tweak the intensity, you tweak the desired outcome, or the message you're delivering, how you're doing it. But I go and watch, if I'm just walking around the park, if my kids have got a game, I'll watch warm-ups that other teams are doing. I'll watch the messages that the coaches are giving out, the managers are giving out. I'll listen to the parents on the sideline and what they're saying. If it's a training session, I'll watch the sessions my kids are in. But if there are others going on, I'll float away and I'll look at that as well. And I'll look at it and I think, can I take any of this? Can I use it? Can I steal your ideas and go and make them and develop them into my own? As I say, in my mind, I'm still very much learning, and I think when you stop learning, you're in trouble.
Yes, I totally agree.
And I think anybody should ever be, should ever get to, if it gets to the point where you think you know it all, then I think it's game over.
That's when the ego takes over you, and that's when you.
Well, it's just. You're not going to. You should strive for improvement all the time, because I'm guessing that's what you want from your players. So should expect it from yourself.
Mm-hmm. No, it's very true. I totally agree. Going into pre-season now.
Yeah.
Do you have like a set routine that you would do, or does it vary every season?
I would say it's fairly consistent. It's something that's developed. So, and again, it's that thing about always looking to improve it or change it. I grew up around the idea of you don't see your football for 3 weeks in pre-season. That were my pre-seasons as a player were, don't worry about your boots, you don't need them.
Yeah.
Or if there was a bag of footballs there, they were there for the sake of being there. They weren't ever used. So that's changed, and that's evolved, and certainly as I've spent more time putting on pre-seasons, that's something I've looked to develop. But there's no getting away from it. The top teams, they have to run
Yeah.
pre-season. They'll turn up and they'll do that. They'll do that. If anybody thinks that pre-season is just keep ball after keep ball after keep ball, or it's not true. You have to be able to run to play football. Because if you didn't, then no one would ever have to retire, would they?
No. Everyone would
you think about the world's greats that have had to, stop playing at some point. Well, a lot of the time it's because they can't move anymore. The body doesn't allow them to. So, we tweak it pre-season and develop it, and we had changes. And sometimes I go back to what I might have done a few years ago. We might need that. I think it's important to do what you believe in, be yourself. You take ideas from other people, but don't try and be somebody else. Don't try and be a carbon copy of someone you admire, because you're not being true to yourself. Don't do what you think you should be doing because everybody else is saying it. There's a lot of pressure, I think, nowadays, particularly on coaches, and particularly young coaches, because of and it seems strange saying it, given that the club that I work at in the background, but given social media nowadays, and this thing about being a dinosaur and being old school and things like that, it's easy to fall in the trap of doing something that you think everybody else is doing rather than what you know.
It's true. It's very true.
So we tend to keep it fairly consistent. Lots of ball work, but lots of hard work within that.
Of course, and it's all of that preparation for the season which will give you the best chance to meet your targets.
Yeah.
So going into the season now, you've done all your preparation, you've done everything. How important to you is the first 3 games of the season?
No more important and no less important than the 3 that follow that, and 3 after that, and the last 3 of the season. I've seen seasons where I've seen teams have an amazing start to the season, and that has given them a momentum and carried them to success. I've seen, our first season started with 2 defeats and 2 draws. So after 4 games, we didn't have a win on 2 points, and we won the league. So you can recover from a bad start. I'm not sure if we'd have recovered if it had been a game longer. But you don't. Last season, we lost the first game of the season as well. That's something we need to improve on. We need a better start. But, I think you kind of get to a point where you understand that every single game is as important as the other. The huge moments come in seasons that you don't expect, and you don't know they're huge moments until you've played all of your games and you look back and think, wow, that was a big point. Everyone looks to the games where you're playing the teams that are up and around you, and or you get to the end of the season and there's something riding on it. But actually, lots and lots of small moments that later on create, big moments, I think. And sometimes it's not even what happens on the football pitch. You look at turning points sometimes, and it might be, it might be a team talk. It might be, when I say a team talk, it might be a team meeting. It might be something that happens with an individual that sparks something. There's so many. It's not always about 3 points or a defeat or a draw. It's that it really is. Hindsight's just
a beautiful thing.
It certainly is. Yeah.
So being in non-league and not being able to have the players every single day like the pros do, how hard is it to cramp everything into, I don't know how many times you train, maybe once or twice a week?
Yeah, so we, in our first year, we only trained once a week, obviously, unless there was a midweek game, and then we didn't have another session. That was largely because we were asking guys to stay part of the club and travel, and it was putting a bit too much on them. This year we increased it to twice a week. It's very, very in terms of having an impact on them. I think that's the pre-season's key for that. When it's just more sessions rather than the games that bit before. But it really depends, I think, on your situation with your team as well. So the season we've just gone, we lost a lot of players to injury. We had suffered a hell of a lot of injuries, which meant there was a quite high turnover of players coming in, and you haven't really got the time. You're almost going from game to game, session to session, and thinking, dealing with that. So it was really important not to overcomplicate things. And I think you can overcomplicate things. You've got to think about the time you have available and making the most out of that time. And that's also where what your players do in their spare time and in their own time really becomes important, because if you're having to worry about the fitness levels of your players because they're not looking after themselves when they're away from you, then you're getting even less time to concentrate on, what you want from them on the pitch in terms of, a style of play or, their jobs within a formation. So it's tough, and I think it takes longer to establish your style, if you like, and be really confident and happy with it. There's not really. I've never really experienced a time where we've always felt 100% satisfied that we've had a group of players together long enough, because you get that turnover, because you don't have contracts. People have other commitments. There's so many clubs at levels that players will go somewhere else potentially. So I'm not sure you're ever at a point where you think, I've had enough time with this group of lads.
Which makes our life harder, as we're replaceable very easily.
Potentially it makes it harder. And
the thing is, I personally think coaches and managers have the toughest role because of how we're looked at, as in, if our team's not performing, it's on our head. And we're replaceable, and then the players can always stay. And I wonder what your view is on that.
I think the thing about when you're a manager, it is different. When you're the manager, the buck stops with you. The blame lies with you. On the flip side of that, when you do things well, people don't look past you. You get all the praise. It's what you've done. And that's not always the case, because good managers get good teams around them. I don't think you ever just got one person. And there's a lot of, and you as a coach, as part of a coaching team, you'll understand this, and I am, and that me, I've had lots of roles where I've been a coach or an assistant, and you feel the pain of losing, but you don't quite feel it the way the manager does, because you're not getting that absolute brunt of the blame. But on the flip side of it, when something comes off and it's brilliant, and it could be something that you've done as a coach or assistant has done, and a decision that gets made, but the manager will be the genius that gets the credit for it. It's so kind of, it is the toughest, but you're the one that gets the rewards for it, if you like, in the eyes of the people that see what's gone on. And I think it's important as a manager that you recognise what your team and your staff are doing for you. I think that's really, really key, because particular people that it's not a one-person job. You spoke earlier about that network of support around you as well, and everybody needs a well done. That's something I've learned, and I remember being a young player in the changing room and listening to a player who had been our best player. He was talking about how the manager hadn't said anything to him, and this person was playing, but he had been a manager himself. He was like at the end of his career, and he had a fantastic football career. And I remember him saying, everybody needs a well done. And it stuck with me. I was 17, 18 years old, listening to, somebody probably close to 40 that had been successful as a manager elsewhere, had gone to play for somebody else at still a good level. And I remember him saying, everybody can benefit from a well done in the right place. And actually reading Sir Alex Ferguson's autobiography, he talks about the power of well done. And I think it's knowing when to use that. Don't use it so often that it becomes meaningless, but know that it needs to be used on everyone if it's the right, don't think he doesn't need it because he's been playing 10 years. He might need it just as much as your youngster that's in their first season. He might need it more because that recognition, it doesn't hurt anyone.
So going back to when you was first started coaching, you was saying that you was making sessions compared to how you would enjoy and how you would, and then you would.
I literally just took the sessions that I thought, yeah, I like that. I'm going to put it on and do it, and I might change it a little bit, and then I just relied on feedback from the players. Something as simple, and this is for those of you that play. If you enjoy a session, tell your coach. Don't just be that. Don't just. And if you don't, feedback's key. If you don't understand why something's been done or you didn't enjoy it, have that same conversation, but have it in a respectful manner. That what is your thinking behind? Because it might be you don't understand, and that might be where the problem is. But it might be that the coach is struggling to get his or her message across, and they don't actually know that. They might think that it's going really well, but there's not a benefit because you don't know why it's been done, or you've not enjoyed it, or you just end up going through the motions. So, and if you do enjoy it, ask yourself why you enjoy it and give that feedback as well. Because you can overcoach, certainly, you can overcomplicate things. And if you do that, then you lose the players as well. So it's that balance. You're always trying to balance.
It's so true. Like I know young players that don't ask questions. They just do it because the coach has said it.
Yeah.
And I think it's like what you said. It's important to ask if you don't understand.
I think so. And I think it's easy to not ask questions. It's not easy to be brave enough to ask the question. We've all been there and done it, I'm sure.
100%. So going off that.
Yeah.
How is it now where you've had to adapt to the modern day and man management has become a lot more high up the table now? Do you believe man management is as important as now as it used to be, or is it more important now?
I think I'm not sure it's any less important. I think it's always been key. It's always been really important. I think there's probably more focus on it and there's more thought behind it, and there's more acknowledgement of it. You tend to reflect back on people you've worked with, and you never thought at the time about why they were really good with their people management skills, and you look back and think, actually, what they were doing at the time really worked for me. I hated him, but he got the best out of me.
It's true.
And then you got, some people will say that, but for me, I don't want someone to hate me as a manager. If I'm getting the best out of them, why do they hate me? So is it about their understanding? Is it about my delivery? And that's where I think there's probably more thought and more conversations occur nowadays around that. I think it's great. There's a lot more focus on mental health. I think there's more understanding. I think that's key. That's certainly something that comes into my mind when I'm thinking about how I am with my players,
Mm-hmm.
in terms of what their situation might be, and that becomes really difficult when their mental health, their emotional well-being is because of your action, and it might be because you're leaving them out the side, and you're leaving them out the side. When you do that, my view is that managers do that because it's what they believe is best for the team and best for the club.
Mm-hmm.
It won't always be best for that individual player. So it's difficult that player's feelings, how you manage that player's feelings, knowing that you're not going to make it any easier by not playing them.
Mm.
That's a tough one. I've had that a few times, and that's difficult. That's a difficult one for you to wrestle with, because that player won't understand that. They might in the future, and that's where I think you have to display a patience and an understanding with people when they behave slightly out of character or they act in a manner that you don't think necessarily appropriate. And that happens quite often.
I fully agree. I've seen it happen, and some managers react in a different way. Some managers will be patient and let it calm down before they go and talk to the player. I mean, each to their own. Everyone does things differently.
I think conversation's really key, and I think the danger is we're in a world where everything's by a text message. You hold a conversation, and half an hour later you get a text message from the same player. I always try to approach that. I always try to approach that with a conversation. If it's telephone conversation or face to face, I try to deliver bad news in that manner. I don't like to do it by text. That would be the absolute last resort, and it'd be because I can't get hold of someone. I've never released anybody by a text message, and I really don't think that I would ever want to do that either. So, I think it's important to have that face to face, or that at least voice to voice contact, and that sometimes you have to be the person that makes that first move as the manager. That's how I see it, and you won't necessarily feel that that's what you should be doing, but it's almost taking that moral stance to do the right thing.
Do you feel like that takes it? It goes a long way. Do you feel like?
I think so, because I think people might not appreciate it at the time. They might not like it, but they'll look back and they'll respect it. I think about when I've been delivered bad news or news I've not liked in the past, and I've been when I was a young player at Dagenham and Redbridge, and I remember I got released in the car park by the assistant manager because the manager didn't deem it important enough to do the job himself.
Right.
And that damaged me. That hurt me. That I thought I was wrong. I thought it was wrong and inappropriate. So I think I tried to do that differently. I wouldn't make mistakes. I'm sure there's someone out there that might see this and say he's a liar, and that might be. But as I've developed and kind of grown, and I've tried to make that, and I took a lot of that from the last manager I worked with, because the way he dealt with players, and he was straight and he was forthright. But he was, when I worked with him, he did it in an honest manner and face to face, and people went away hurt, but actually went, well, how else would I have wanted him to do that? And I don't think.
No, it does. I agree. It does go a long way to say it face to face, because text messages can get received in the wrong way.
Yeah, and I think if I set that example, then I can expect that from the players. So then if I get a text message off a player, then I can feel disappointed that they've done it that manner, when actually I've always given them the courtesy of a
Face-to-face.
phone call or a face-to-face.
No, I fully agree with you. Going into the later stages now, what's your best moment and worst moment as a manager, hashtag?
Best moment would be winning the league. That's quite an easy one.
Mm-hmm.
And worst, I'm not sure. You get lots of lows through a season. I'm not sure. Probably maybe going out of the FA Vars, but that wasn't so much from a personal point of view, because it was more about how it affected other people around the club and how disappointed they were. And for me, it was then managing the kind of not getting too low about it, because any team can lose a football match. If you happen to be in a cup competition, it means that you've lost that chance. So there's every chance you can, you lose the first round you play in. There's more chance of that happening actually than you getting all the way through to the final. So it was managing that level of excitement about being in a national competition. Went out in a disappointing manner as well, but that happens, and that can happen to anyone. So it's having played very briefly under and then observed someone like John Steele, who's been in football forever and is probably the most successful non-league manager ever. Mm-hmm. He'd always say about never too high, never too low, and it's so true. If you go through extremes, and you'll hear people about being balanced about wins and defeats. If you become too extreme and get overexcited when you win, and far too low when you lose, you're talking about a huge roller coaster of emotions that are difficult to control. Where if you just remain a little balanced and try and keep an even keel, then you've got more chance of a consistency to your approach, and a more chance of your players, I think, to reacting and responding appropriately.
No,
so
100%.
Yeah, that's a low, but I've not really had any lows as a hashtag manager. I've had far bigger lows.
I mean, it's true. I personally believe in analyze your lows and then try and resolve them, but don't daunt on them for too long. And when you get your highs, don't sit on the high, try and get more.
Yeah, and the thing is with highs and lows is that with the highs last for that long, and the lows will stick with you. They'll hang around like a bad smell. So, and that's why teams, when they're, when you go for a bad run of form, sometimes it feels like you're never going to get out of it. Because it does. It sticks around, and it's difficult. It's a horrible feeling. But that's where you have to control your own emotions and not sit and feel sorry for yourself first and foremost, and then not allow people. And it's not just your players. You can't allow anyone to feel sorry for themselves. Losing a football match isn't the end of the world. You will recover from it.
100%.
And our club, we've never really experienced any lows. But if we're going to be a proper football club, we will have real low periods. There will be relegation battles. There will be relegations. There's not many football clubs that you can say have never been relegated.
It's true.
You're going to get it's a roller coaster, and you will only sometimes you need those setbacks to grow. It's how you deal with them.
Exactly, and I think it's important to lose as a coach.
Yeah,
from it.
Yeah, without a doubt. For coach, players, setbacks, it's what make people.
It's so true. So true. Right, I did ask on Twitter for people to ask you some questions and see what.
Right. Okay.
One gentleman said, any opportunities to shadow a session or watch? Keen to learn from different coaches and levels.
Yeah, I think that's something that's we would always be open to. It's obviously something you have to be careful of in terms of volume, but we've had people come and observe sessions and watch, and even get involved at times as well. So no, I wouldn't ever say no to that, but it's we are unable to, unfortunately, to just operate an open house. But yeah, I've always been open to that.
That's fantastic. Is there any way would they have to get in contact with you, or?
Yeah, I think probably the best place is to get contact via the club. There's an email address attached to the club's social media handles, and we could look at something like that. But again, as I say, it's really about managing volume and expectation around that sometimes. But yeah, it's if we can accommodate it, we'll do it.
Fantastic. Do you think Asude will ever play higher league football?
He's got the raw materials to do so. He's got a little bit of growing in terms of his game. I think there's always potential for play. We're step 5 of non-league football, so I would like to think that most players that play at that level have got that ability to play higher. How higher, I don't know. That depends on the opportunities that he gets, but also that and same with any of the players, but with Josh, is what you do away from, what you do when people are not watching often will define where you get to and what people get to watch.
100%. You've got a reserve team side now.
Yeah.
Created that, and this gentleman's question was, what sort of transition will be happening between the reserves and the firsts?
I think the relationship we'd expect to be most. So we're looking at our reserves. We've just appointed a management team for the reserves who are young, ambitious coaches moving into management that I think we're giving a really good opportunity to and be ideal for us. And the idea is that we will hopefully use the reserves for, to have a young reserve side with potential of playing in the first team and beyond. It's not just about, can we attract players that are going to play for our first team, but can we attract players that are going to play for our first team and then have the ability to, just use us as a stepping stone. If we don't progress quickly enough as a club up the ladder, then we want to at least provide a platform for players that can. So yeah, players that have got potential to play in our first team might not quite be ready yet, but there will be a relationship. We will train at the same times. My reserve team managers are part of my coaching staff in my mind, and that they will contribute to first team training at times, and vice versa. Our first team staff will contribute to reserve. So part of one club, really. We want a one club mentality around it. They're not going to be a separate entity that operate on their own. So hopefully, the idea is that we provide, the reserves provides a pathway to our first team.
Steve Gleed replied, and he
interesting.
He asked the question of, who is the most frustrating player you have come across? Got every ability, but frustrated you the most?
How long have we got? It's a list of them. Because I think you look around changing rooms, and the changing rooms I've been in, and you look at players, and particularly there will be a host of reasons why a player is playing at a particular level, and you'll have those that are, you'll have some that are, I'd say, a small percentage that are overachieving because they've got an attitude that belies their ability, and they're getting the absolute most out of themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this will happen at every level of the game, even international football. You look in international football changing room, and there will be people that say, "How did that person ever play international football?" And there will be a reason that they did. And it might be they might not be the most technically gifted, but they would have made the most out of what they've got and some. And every changing room will have that. Then there'll be some that are, playing at a level because of convenience. And then there'll be some that are playing at a lower level than they should be playing at because of the things we spoke about earlier, the things that they do away from, football time, how they look after their body, how much they want to push themselves, how much they want to test themselves, what their resolve is to challenge. Some people, are comfortable in a comfortable environment where they're confident that they're at the top of the tree, if you like. So there's so many different reasons, and it's interesting because obviously Steve is the parent of one of our players, Ross Gleed, who you could argue would at some time could fit into that category. He's a boy that has played at a higher level, can definitely, and I don't mind speaking about Ross because this is conversation I have with him, and he knows it, and if he sees this, he'll have a little kind of wry grin about it, because we talk about, is a boy who, in my opinion, could be what he wants to be in terms of his power, in terms of his technical ability, his flexibility, can play a number of positions. He should be playing at least 2 levels above the level he's playing, in my opinion. But for some reason he isn't. And some of that's been about his enjoyment. Some of that's been about, maybe how his own attitude's been towards things. It may be about how he's been managed in the past. I don't know, but he's an example that if we were be fortunate enough to get promotion, I know would cope comfortably with the level. If we were to go again, he could cope comfortably with the level if his attitude and his mindset's right. And he has sometimes got an attitude about him that appears as, and I do believe he cares deeply, but he sometimes appears a little laid back about things, and that can be a barrier for some people. So he's just, but there's been lots. There's been lots, and there's boys in my changing room now who I look at, and they frustrated because as a coach, and it's a good thing that these people are frustrated, because as a coach and as a manager, you want the best for them. I do believe that. You have to be, you have to have a huge element of being of selflessness, and wanting the best for other people and trying to make other people better. I think if you're too single-minded about your own journey and progress as a coach and a manager, you're not going to you're not going to develop people well enough, and you almost end up failing yourself to some extent. But yeah, so there's lots of them, hundreds of them frustrated me, because I look at it and I think, my God, what could you be? On the flip side of that, some of them I look at and I think, you will go on, because you've got that desire and that determination, that single-mindedness.
Fantastic. I mean, wow. Which football manager from the past or the present do you admire the most?
I've always said, I grew up watching Sir Alex Ferguson dominate, English football. What he did with Aberdeen was just ridiculous, phenomenal. His ability to adapt and change with the times as well, the longevity of it all. I'm not sure anyone in my mind will ever get close. But all the great managers, really, I think you got to admire those people. Like, everybody wants to be able to have their team play like Guardiola. He's got this real this single-minded belief and philosophy that is so driven and that you can only admire. I love the way Klopp's teams play. You know, what does he call it? Heavy metal. It's just fantastic managers. There's so many of them, but for me, the one that will always be Sir Alex Ferguson.
Fantastic. And last question: what is your favorite hashtag?
What's my favorite hashtag?
Mm.
Wow, that's don't know. United.
There we go. It's a good question, but a very confusing one.
It's confused me. My favorite, my favorite hashtag is hashtag United.
Fantastic.
Is that an acceptable answer?
I accept that. I accept that. Jay, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate your time.
Fish, thanks for having me, mate. Really appreciate it. It's I think it's great what you're doing. Really look forward to seeing more of these episodes, and wish you all the best as well with your own career. So
thank you. I wish you all the best with yourself. Your hashtag. I hope you guys go and win the league again and get what's yours.
Well, we'll have to earn it. That's for sure. There'll be other teams that are looking to do the same, and we'll do our best. We'll try to improve, and I think that's all we can. You can try to improve each year.
100%. I'm gonna definitely attend 1 or 2 games this year if I can.
Let me know. You're more than welcome. Give me a shout and you come over and see us. That'd be great.
Thank you so much. Is there anyone you want to shout out, or do you have a business that we can shout out and put it on?
No. Just if we shout anyone out, shout out yourself, your podcast. People watching and subscribing, and good luck with that. But to anybody really that's looking to get into to coaching, that is a coach or a manager, then keep doing what you're doing, keep working hard. It's when you get good moments, they make it worth it.
100%. But thank you again, Jay. I really appreciate it. Thank you guys for watching.
No, thanks for having us.
Subscribe. And thank you.